me feeling like I'm academics.
All right, so where should we start? I think we can start at, let's start with the obvious. So TMZ, who, to be honest, I think have been getting, they've been getting a lot of push from the cops and investigators, basically saying you guys' sources are wrong, or y'all are fucking up our investigation by reporting erroneous things from y'all fake sources that's not within the police department. Now, Harvey Levin came out before and said, hey, no, it wasn't a cop who told us some of the stuff we're reporting, because remember they said that, the body was found frozen. Now, this is the body of Celeste Rivas. If you don't know, it's an underage young girl that a rapper, or let's just say artist, David, was dating, and she was found supposedly decapitated or dismembered, but dead in his Tesla's frunk. Now, if you know anything about Teslas, or you know about a frunk is usually way smaller than a trunk. She was supposedly a very petite, very small girl, and they're saying that because of decomposition and maybe dismemberment, she was able to fit, and apparently her torso or whatever left of her body was only 73 pounds. But they said she was found in a frozen state. Now, a lot of more things have to be discussed, because apparently she was missing for a while. I'm skeptical of the parents. How the hell is your daughter missing for a while and you're not raising all bloody hell? How come now the police are investigating and you're not even like publicly saying, hey, listen, we're mourning and grieving. You know there's a lot of public interest in this. Then we hear about maybe there was a tumultuous home situation, so maybe the reason why she wasn't at home and she ran away to be with her boyfriend was because it's very messy. Cops are unwilling to say that this is actually a murder investigation. They're saying that there's nothing that indicates beyond maybe the concealment of a body that is foul play. They can't even confirm the cause of death that they could officially say this is a homicide. What is going on? Now, we don't know if she's been dead for maybe a couple weeks, a couple months. It becomes murky. One thing for sure, two things for certain. David, the singer, who seemingly has some sort of, I would say odd fixation with death. We've seen he brought caskets and other things to his show. If you listen to the songs, you heard graphic depictions of death and also, love, or themes of love mixed with death. Speaking of like dying, you don't know if he's talking about maybe his feelings dying or maybe the person dying. This becomes odd. Very odd. He had a tour going on amidst the murder investigation that he subsequently, after the police started putting a little bit of pressure, he canceled. He has not said a word for neither the family. Search warrants have been executed, but we haven't heard a thing. We then hear there's a grand jury. Now, if you don't know what a grand jury is a group of individuals that convene, right, to basically vote, typically, if there is enough probable cause to bring forth criminal charges. Now, this grand jury is not a normal grand jury. It's a grand jury for investigation, which means that they believe that there is a crime that was committed. So that's reasonable suspicion. But they don't have a probable cause to charge anyone. And now this is a investigative grand jury that wants to poke and prod around and issue subpoenas. That's really what it's for, to figure out, did somebody kill this girl? Who hid the body? Who moved the body? Verizon, give us your phone records. AT&T. Let's see if we can take people's phones, get some search warrants. But this is the most convoluted and also complex, but I also got to say it's very interesting that we have no idea what the fuck has happened, because the cops are keeping quiet as if they don't know what's happened. But TMZ's back again with another lead. Now, the last lead they had, as I said, was the whole frozen body, which the police came out and said, no, you're wrong. So it looked like it's one of the first times I've ever seen it. Keep in mind, TMZ is the one who broke the death of Michael Jackson, right? The only thing of recent memory I could remember them breaking incorrectly a huge story was when they reported, I don't know if y'all remember this one in the chat if you do, they reported that Lil Wayne died. But he didn't. Obviously, Wayne's still with us today. But their record and their track record with these type of things is pristine. How do I know? I know how TMZ gets down. TMZ pays for information. For example, Aaron Hernandez, when he had like a note or a few things written in the cell before he subsequently hung himself, they paid about, don't quote me on this, but around $70,000 or $77,000 for that note. They're down to pay for information. And we also know they have police on their payroll. LAPD particularly. You know, these cops, they don't get that much. You know, they might have some knowledge of an investigation. They have a source at TMZ. TMZ's not going to out them. TMZ says, yo, here's a band. Here's 2 bands. Give us the info. We're going to run the story. It all makes sense. They do it all the time. But this time around, the captain of the LAPD says, TMZ's wrong. TMZ even outed their own source. Well, we got it from the medical examiner's office. TMZ's doubling down again. They're coming back around to say they have another source. Now, this source wouldn't be in the police department because obviously also the police captain has said, yo, you're wrong. It wouldn't be in the medical examiner's office because the case has escalated. It's now coming from the courts, from the grand jury proceeding. They're now saying that what I told you guys is an investigative grand jury that was impaneled has now believed that either through their research, questions, or subpoenas, they have possibly enough to indict. And I would think it's an indictment because an arrest could be made without an indictment. But I would think they're waiting for an indictment because why not lock these niggas up already? TMZ's breaking news now. They're saying, and by the way, this is Harvey Levin. If you don't know, he's the owner, or, well, not the owner. He's the founder of TMZ and the CEO currently. He's breaking some news about this David case.
Who is about to get arrested in the case involving the death of Celeste Rivas, and it is not David. We know a lot. Let me download you on what we found out. So this week, there has been a witness before the grand jury, and he is intimately involved in David's life, the singer David, who the LAPD and the LA County DA says is a suspect in what they believe is the murder of Celeste Rivas. His name is Robert Morgenroth. Robert Morgenroth is the head of Mogul Vision, which is the label for David. But more than just the executive, the general manager, he is a manager. He manages David, and he is involved in David's day-to-day life and clearly knows a lot. So on Monday, Morgenroth was in the hallway with his lawyer, and there were people around, and they weren't sitting or standing right next to them, but the hallway echoes. And it was clear to people around there that there was a conversation that Morgenroth was having with his lawyer. And he was recounting what happened inside the grand jury room.
Okay, sorry. So let's be very clear here. I want to make sure you guys are just following everything, because sometimes when we're not covering every single thing about a case, when I just sum it up, you might be like, you lost me. I never want to lose you guys, right? So the grand jury's there. There's a guy who's like a manager, but he's like a label owner. Don't know really what he really does, but like he's definitely involved in David's business, right? He got questioned. And let me break down what happens in a grand jury. Okay? So in a grand jury, there is no judge. It's really a prosecutorial ran situation. So the prosecutor runs shit, and the people who are on the grand jury, they don't have to just stay silent. They could ask questions. They could ask questions to the prosecutor. And if the prosecutor brings someone on the stand, they could ask questions to the person on the stand. So this is one of the only things or only places where the jury, right, the grand jury, they could, hey, why did you do that? They could do that. So that's how they get to get their, their wits or their knowledge about, is there enough information for this to proceed to the probable cause stage, which is what would be called a true bill of indictment. This guy goes in. We don't know if David's going in yet, but this guy who's like the manager, he goes in. He goes in, and I'm not sure if, I don't want to speak, again, I'm not a lawyer, but, I play one on stream. But I do kind of research and study these things to give you guys the best information I can, especially since we don't have necessarily a legal team sitting here with me. In most grand jury proceedings, your lawyer's not in the court. So it's not something, because of the nature of that proceeding, your lawyer isn't there to save you. Okay? Now, I'm pretty sure you could pause the proceeding and talk to your lawyer or whatever, but it's not like an interrogation, or it's nothing where like your lawyer's formally engaged in the court. It's a little bit different. So why do I say that? What he's saying makes sense. The lawyer is there, but the lawyer is outside the court. The client goes in. He's getting asked all type of questions. Then he comes back out, and then, they could have probably went to a conference room or somewhere else, but looked like he's telling his lawyer in the hallway what the fuck happened. When he's telling his lawyer, TMZ is slick, and there's other people who probably know that the grand jury is in that building. They're just loitering around. They overhear something that seems to be substantial, like the grand jury's nearing what seems to be an arrest, where this is more than just random poking and prodding around like, where were you on the night? No. They're asking direct questions that seem to be like, maybe they're tripping them up, like, and they're like, oh, shit.
With the prosecutor in the case, the prosecutor, Beth Silverman, according to Morgenroth, here's what he said. She was very pushy on why I didn't call police. And then he went on to say that he said, in response to that he said, quote, I feel like I didn't have the responsibility to do that and just wanted to continue with the tour. Now, we do not know the context of this, but when the DA is grilling him about not calling the police, that has to involve a crime. You're not going to call the police because somebody didn't show up for work. You're going to call the police if there's some kind of crime involved, especially since this is a case involving what the DA says is a crime. So we don't know what Morgenroth knew that would require him, according to the DA, to pick up a telephone and call the police. But there's something. And again, he was involved in David's day-to-day life. So, okay, there is more. There is another manager in this same company, and his name is Josh Marshall. That name may be familiar to you because Josh Marshall was the guy who leased the house in the Hollywood Hills that David was staying at. It is the same house that the LAPD raided pursuant to a search warrant just shortly after Celeste's body was found inside David's Tesla. We are told by law enforcement sources that that house and that search was really critical in their investigation. So Josh Marshall, who leased the house, who signed the lease.
Okay, so it looks like they're investigating David, his manager, which is Josh Marshall. So the manager would sign off on a bunch of stuff. Then kind of the label owner / guy who's been dealing with touring.
is part of the company Mogul Vision that Morgan Roth is also involved with. Morgan Roth and Josh Marshall are both managers of David. So they seem to know a lot about David. I don't know, we don't know, if Josh Marshall was called as a witness. I would frankly be very surprised if he wasn't. But Morgan Roth testified for at least 3 days. We don't know if he was testifying last week as well. One other interesting thing happened on Tuesday. Morgan Roth went into a courtroom that is next to where the grand jury was hearing the testimony. And along with Morgan Roth, the DA, Beth Silverman, also walked in. Now that's important because when there's something that happens in the grand jury where there's a dispute, for example, if a witness won't answer a question and the DA is pressing for an answer, if there's a stalemate, the DA can go to the judge and force the witness to testify, or at least get the judge to do that. We don't know if that's why they walked in, but both Morgan Roth and Beth Silverman walked into that courtroom. And when they did, we have a reporter who was down there who was in the courtroom, and the judge kicked our reporter out and closed the hearing. So something was going on about what was happening in the grand jury room, and it may well be there was some dispute over what Morgan Roth would or would not say.
Okay. So they're kind of, by the way, I've never seen TMZ this transparent. They're literally saying, we got a journalist down there. They're kind of sitting in all open court proceedings, and it looks like there was a problem in the grand jury room. And because of that, the judge had to rule on it. And because the grand jury, all matters with the grand jury secret, they kicked out their reporter out of the public courtroom because that judge had to rule on the secret grand jury hearing. So it looked like they're kind of speculating here that there's an arrest nearing, but they probably have a tip. They're saying it's not going to be David that's arrested.
But again, we don't know what that is. Now let's go to Wednesday because this gets even more interesting. So I told you that Beth Silverman is the DA. Morgan Roth's lawyer is a woman by the name of Evan Janess. So this is after the conversation on Monday. On Wednesday, Beth Silverman, the prosecutor, walks out into the hallway and starts talking to attorney Evan Janess. And what we are told by people who are around there is that that Beth Silverman was very frustrated and said that she would have a judge issue a body attachment to a female witness that was supposed to appear before the grand jury, a witness whom Janess represents. Remember, Janess also represents Morgan Roth. So apparently this witness didn't show up, and Beth Silverman seemed frustrated, according to the people there, and said,
okay, we're getting into the weeds here. So it looks like, to kind of sum this up, the police are looking at this David situation with the deceased Celeste Rivas as more as a convoluted thing than just straight up this guy killed his girlfriend. They're looking at it as this is a plot, maybe not necessarily with the murder, but definitely a cover-up. They're looking at it as, hey, if we're going to make some arrests, the people of interest is not only David, who may have done the killing, or maybe another person who may have done the murder. It's about who has been doing things to evade authorities, move the body, store the body, maybe dismember the body, and maybe they're trying to arrest someone before they get to David that person could snitch. That's always a good strategy. If you want David, because you think he did the murder, but you have no proof, maybe you arrest the person who moved the body. Maybe you arrest the person who stored the body. Maybe you arrest someone else around his team Because here's the thing. Everybody's gang until the charges come down. And you tell them, hey, you're facing 30. You down to lie for your homie that much? So that might be a strategy. But apparently there's an arrest that is nearing. And we will see who actually does get arrested in this thing. Okay, people. Curtis 50 Cent Jackson. He's not letting up. He's not letting